The Republic of Somalia is the only country in Africa that has never been colonized, yet they have never really had a real shot at independence either. Before we get into this video, just a quick disclaimer: a lot of the pre-colonial history of African countries is shrouded in mystery and legend. In the case of Somalia, much of what we know comes from competing narratives between Somalia and Ethiopia. Both claim many of the same historical figures and events as their own. For example, both countries consider this man their king. We will be focusing on the Somali narrative for this episode. Let's go back in time to the year 1270. The majority of what is now Somalia was ruled by a monarchy based in the town of Mogadishu. There are conflicting accounts about the origins of the dynasty, but it is said that it was founded by a man named Samatar ibn Abd al-Aziz al-Buri, who was the governor of Mogadishu, appointed by the then Sultan of Zanzibar. After gaining independence from Oman, Samatar made Mogadishu his capital. His descendants would rule the region until the early 20th century. Across the Indian Ocean, thousands of miles away, European powers were fighting over control of trade routes and land, and soon this struggle would come to East Africa. Like most empires of its time, the Ottoman Empire controlled large parts of North Africa and the Middle East, as well as having significant influence over some parts of East Africa. But as the 19th century progressed, their hold on these territories began to weaken. Soon, the coastal city-states of East Africa would be fighting over who would replace the Ottomans. The main contenders were the sultans of Zanzibar and the Portuguese, but ultimately, neither side would win. Instead, it would be an unexpected third party that would control most of the coastline. By the late 1800s, the British and the Portuguese had both lost much of their navies due to fighting other European powers. This left the door open for another empire to grow in the Indian Ocean. The Gujarat Sultanate, also known as the Kingdom of Gujarat, was an Indian kingdom located on the western coast of the Indian subcontinent. In the early 1800s, while the rest of India was being colonized by the British East India Company, Gujarat managed to remain independent. They would use this independence to launch a navy which would terrorize the Indian Ocean. By the 1830s, they controlled key ports across the western coast of India, as well as parts of the Arabian Peninsula. From here, the Sultanate would start establishing trading posts along the East African coast. By the mid-1800s, they would begin taking territory from the crumbling Portuguese holdings. The Sultanate even launched military expeditions into the interior of what is today Somalia and Kenya with the goal of expanding their domain. However, they would meet fierce resistance from local leaders, so instead they focused once again on expanding their Indian holdings. But the British weren't going to let them expand unchallenged. By the late 1800s, the British East Africa Company was formed with the goal of conquering what is today Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda. The British initially kept the company out of Somalia due to French and Italian interest in the region. But after concluding an agreement with these two powers, the British would turn their attention to Somalia. With backing from the British, local leaders were able to defeat the Sultanate decisively. Though the Sultanate still controlled some parts of the Indian Ocean, their naval power was broken and they no longer posed a threat to British interests. In the scramble for Africa, the British would take Somaliland, then under the rule of the Gadi Bara clan, and make it a British protectorate. At the same time, the Italians would take the rest of Somalia and make it an Italian colony. Though Somalia was now a colony, it was not fully under the control of these European powers. Much of the territory remained independent, fiercely resisting colonization. The Majeerteen clan were the ones leading the resistance against both the British and Italians. They would form alliances with neighboring clans and repel numerous attempts by the colonial powers to expand their territories. Although the Italian and British would eventually conquer all of Somalia, this period of independence earned Somalia the title of the only African country never to be colonized. However, this isn't entirely true because there is one small part of Somalia that actually was colonized. It's a tiny peninsula surrounded by Ethiopia to the east, Djibouti to the south, and the Gulf of Aden to the north. Its strategic location meant that it was desirable to multiple colonial powers. While the rest of Somalia was claimed by Italy and Britain, this area was taken by the French and incorporated into their colony of Djibouti. The Italians would eventually take full control of the area after World War II, but it would remain a part of Somalia up until 1977. In that year, Somalia would invade the Ogaden region of Ethiopia, sparking the Ogaden War. The war was fought between Somalia and Ethiopia with support from the Soviet Union and Cuba on the Ethiopian side, and the United States and the UK on the Somali side. Despite being outnumbered, the Ethiopians would win the war, pushing the Somalis back across the border. After the war, Somalia would shift their focus towards achieving independence for the Ogaden region, giving up on ever taking it by force. To this day, there is a large Somali population in this region, and the fight for independence continues. With the end of the war, Somalia would look to establish itself as a major player in the region. They would do this by launching an invasion of the Western Sahara, where they supported the Sahrawi people's fight against Morocco. Although the Western Sahara conflict rages on to this day, the international community did not appreciate Somalia's attempt to insert itself into the conflict. This led to sanctions which hurt the average Somali citizen. And so public opinion turned against the government. The government responded to the growing dissent by becoming increasingly authoritarian, which only made things worse. Eventually, this led to the Somali Civil War, which started in 1991. The Civil War was fought between various clan-based factions who all wanted to control the country. The war ended up claiming around 50,000 lives and leaving hundreds of thousands more without homes. But it also gave birth to the militant group Al-Shabaab. This group would cause massive problems for Somalia. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. Although the international community had largely abandoned Somalia during the Civil War, they would eventually step in to help. The African Union sent in peacekeepers to try and restore order to the country. At the same time, the UN tried to organize new elections, but neither side could achieve their goals. The peacekeepers couldn't stop the violence, and the elections resulted in a stalemate. This led to the current president of Somalia, Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, seizing power in a controversial move. Though he promised stability and prosperity, his term has been marked by increasing instability. The ongoing drought and famine hasn't helped matters either. Since 2010, Somalia has experienced 4 devastating droughts. This has led to thousands of deaths, most of them being children. Yet throughout all this instability, Al-Shabaab has continued to grow. The group was formed at the height of the Civil War and soon became one of the most powerful forces in southern Somalia. By 2006, they had seized much of southern Somalia and were threatening to seize Mogadishu. In response to this, the African Union sent in peacekeepers from Uganda and Burundi to try and push them back. While the Ugandan and Burundian troops were successful in pushing Al-Shabaab out of Mogadishu, the group still controls parts of rural Somalia. From here, they launched guerrilla attacks against the Somali and African Union forces. As the years went on, the group grew more and more powerful, eventually linking up with other militant groups in the region to form the Al-Qaeda affiliate known as Al-Shabaab. Today, the group still controls parts of rural Somalia and continues to launch attacks against the Somali and African Union forces. The group's goal is to overthrow the current government and establish an Islamic state in its place. While they may not be able to achieve this anytime soon, their resilience should not be understated. Though Somalia's history is filled with struggle and hardship, there is hope for the future. If the country can overcome its colonial past and its recent history of civil war, it may finally be able to reach its potential. Thank you for watching.